is Geek Public Radio right here on geekpublicradio.com. I am Topher, and with me, as usual, is Crazy Chris.
What'd he do?
And this week we're talking about comeuppance and people getting what they deserve, sorta.
Get what you deserve.
And a whole lot more.
And so, you too can get what you deserve if you go to geekpublicradio.com.
Yes.
Go ahead, buddy.
Go.
Oh, geekpublicradio.com, where you can find all of our previous videos, all of our future videos just like this one. We're bringing you the latest in geek culture and news, all of our podcasts, every cool thing that we talk about. You can find it right there. If you guys happen to be watching this on YouTube, make sure that you click the like button, hit the subscribe button, and if you could, please hit that notification bell so you get notified every single time that we drop a video just like this. As Topher has alluded, we are 100% talking about the comeuppance and the justice system finally working, sort of, maybe. We're going to discuss it. But yeah, we are talking, of course, about Alec Baldwin facing charges for the murder, for the involuntary manslaughter of Helena Hutchinson. We're going to talk about that, what that means for him, what that means for the family, and what we think about all of it altogether. So, yeah. First, Topher, how the heck are you, buddy?
I am not doing too bad. We're changing a lot of things in the studio, so yeah, I've been busy.
We're always changing things in the studio. That is like busy, the hallmark of Geek Public.
Busy.
We are doing all the fun stuff here. We got some cool stuff. We got new mics. We got new tables. We got new decorations that nobody can see because they're not on video.
New computers.
We got all kinds of cool stuff, man. We are ready to rock and roll. Man, let's jump into this. I am so freaking excited.
Right,
what do you got for me?
From Daily Wire, Alec Baldwin indicted on charge of involuntary manslaughter in the Rust shooting. This came out like 3 days ago, I think.
Roughly 3 days ago, yeah. The 19th.
Yeah.
Yeah, today's the 20th. Yeah, today's the 22nd.
So Alec Baldwin was indicted Friday by a grand jury on a charge of involuntary manslaughter in connection to the 2021 shooting on set of the film Rust.
Can we talk about for a second 2021? It's been 3 years. This freaking scumbag, and I'm sorry, I'm just going to call it what it is. This scumbag has been walking around for 3 years.
Yes.
He's actually been a part of a series that I've been watching, which it's hard for me to root for him because he's supposed to be the good guy. But I'm talking about Dr. Death on Peacock. And
yeah, I haven't watched it.
I can't. It's hard for me to root for him because I'm like, I hate the fact that you're in this show. I hate it. I kind of want the other guy to win. Based on true events, too. And I'm sitting there like, dude was a monster. And I'm like, I kind of hope he walks because you're a piece of crap. Not really, but. All right. Anyways, what does it say?
So two special prosecutors, Carrie Morrissey and Jason Lewis, presented their case this week to the grand jury after receiving further analysis from the gun that was used. Variety has reported the report found that the shooting occurred by pull or rearward depression of the trigger, something Baldwin previously had said that he hadn't did.
Oh, you mean he denied killing somebody?
Yeah, he denied.
That's weird. Guilty people never do that.
You know, this thing of like, I don't know, if instead of completely always saying guns are bad and things are horrible and they need to get rid of them and this, that, and the other, if you would have like done something like, I don't know, taken a class, learned how to use them, this would not have been a problem unless you actively intending to do this.
Exactly. And that's really funny that you bring that up, Chris, or Topher. I'm sorry. So that's really funny that you bring that up, Topher. Because it seems as though possibly Alec Baldwin is, mid-60s, I think?
Yeah.
And I feel like, gosh, it's almost like he's been in a bunch of movies. A lot of them that have guns in them. And it's almost, it's eluding me, but I can't seem to figure it out. Like, maybe he has had formal instruction about gun safety on set. I would think that has happened at least a time or two. Possibly. Maybe. Would you think that that's the case? I mean,
you'd think.
I'm just going to say that the movies that we've made, there have been guns on set. And we have never, as indie as we are, we've never had an incident with them. And I'm going to knock on wood because accidents are very real. They do happen. I will never discount that. However, when full precaution is taken and when you exercise the safety protocols that have been put in place to keep people, from being fucking shot, when you put those things in place on a set, people tend to not get, freaking shot.
Right.
So,
especially, like somebody who had an argument with prior.
More than once, specifically about the safety being displayed on the set and the working conditions that the actors were being subjected to and that the crew was being subjected to and that this person was doing and exercising their God-given right, to bring this to the attention of the executive producer, whose job it is, by the way, to make sure this doesn't happen. It is full-on criminal negligence at absolute minimum.
Right.
That's the minimum. And we're getting him on involuntary manslaughter. I mean, I get it. You got to charge him what you think that you can get away with charging him with and what you think you can prove. I understand how prosecutorial procedure works. I get that. But I'm sorry. I've been kind of researching some of this stuff and I dabble in law. I've done it for a long time. I love doing it because it's one of my favorite things to do. Know your stuff, right? Know your laws, especially where you live.
Know your role and
know your role. So this is what's funny here. I think this falls more in line with voluntary manslaughter. I genuinely do. After looking and reviewing some things, I think this falls under voluntary manslaughter, if not outright murder too. If not outright second-degree murder. And if it can be proven intent, as in he stashed those bullets and he put the bullets in that gun and he pressed that and he pulled that trigger, he squeezed that trigger while pointing it directly at her with the intent to kill her. Yeah, that's murder. And I'm sorry, when you look at the string of evidence that boils up to that particular point, it certainly does look that way. Now, could it be purely circumstantial? Of course. And people say, it's all circumstantial evidence. It doesn't prove anything. Bullshit. There are people sitting in jail for life right now on circumstantial evidence. I promise. Look it up. There are people who have gotten murder raps on purely circumstantial evidence with no direct evidence. People, no body, no crime. I've heard that one too. That's a fun one. Again, I'm calling bullcrap. They can absolutely put you in jail.
Well, let's look at what involuntary manslaughter is.
All right, let's take a look. What do we got?
All right. So, in a quick Google search of what involuntary manslaughter is from findlaw.com, involuntary manslaughter usually refers to unintentional killing. The basics of the charge may come from criminal negligence, recklessness, or dangerous or impaired driving. It differs from murder or voluntary manslaughter because the victim's death was not intended.
Okay. So we pointed this gun directly at Helena Hutchinson, who was telling us to squeeze the trigger for realistic effect, which I get. Okay. I've been on movie sets. I get it. Yes. It helps look real when you actually operate the weapon as it's intended to be operated. I do. I get that. However, at what point was Helena Hutchinson convinced that this gun was not loaded? What process transpired to make her think that this weapon was not loaded? There was a process to that. At some point, somebody told her this is an unloaded weapon. And that usually occurs when somebody hands you a weapon and says cold gun.
Which you're then supposed to open
and inspect for yourself.
And double check and even look to make sure there's nothing in the barrel.
Correct. And this apparently was not done.
How you're supposed to do it.
So this apparently was not done. Why in the hell was that not done? And I can only conclude two things. One, reckless negligence, because you were trying to get through the scene with this woman who's your cinematographer, who
has been complaining,
whom you have had yelling matches that are evidenced by other people's testimony. And then you don't inspect the weapon, and then you pull the trigger while pointing it directly at her. Not only killing her, by the way, I just want to point this out, but wounding the man behind her.
Like I'm trying to figure out like how the cameras are set up. Because if the our cameras, our cinematographer isn't sitting behind the lens.
Right.
The camera is mounted there. Our cinematographer's off to the side looking at the monitor.
I'm assuming it was a direct shot. I'm assuming she was probably directly in the lens going, yes, 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 pointed at me.
Right.
You know, pull it now. Okay, squeeze the trigger, right? She's giving him instructions. But that, and apparently that was the big part of the problem that he had, was that she was basically trying to run the movie. And because, and you and I have been on set, I've heard you had these discussions with your cinematographer. I've heard you guys go back and forth. And it can sound like it's heated, but it's really not. You have a vision of the way you want the film to look.
I want it to look like this, yada, yada, yada.
Right. And the cinematographer goes, okay, that's great, but this is what we can do.
Right.
And but that is a discussion that you guys have.
But
right?
I tend to be Semper Gumby. I normally look at him going, this is what I'm thinking. How can we do it?
Right. Correct. Because you're actually really good at your freaking job and you've got a trophy to prove it. But anyways, so we got an award. Boom.
But let's look at voluntary manslaughter.
Yeah. Let me look at this one. Okay, hang on. So pull this one up for me.
Okay.
Voluntary manslaughter. This is according to Justia. Voluntary manslaughter is a form of homicide that occurs without premeditation, deliberation, or malice aforethought. It is defined as an intentional killing committed in a heat of passion that results from provocation. Gee, that sounds really, really familiar to the scenario I just described, doesn't it?
Constantly arguing, constantly being up in each other's faces, constantly having issues with each other, and then magically something happens that ends up with that person dying.
Right. So
seems very suspicious.
It does. Here's why I think that this falls under more voluntary manslaughter / murder too. It is the heat of the passion. Alec Baldwin has a long history of being a hothead,
right,
and being a man with anger issues. It is well documented at this point. The man has been in trouble several times on several sets because of his temper problems.
Yeah,
to the point where some directors don't even want to work with him ever again because of his temper. So because the killing is adequately, and I'm sorry guys for the legalese, because the killing is adequately provoked as a matter of law, the criminal charges are reduced from murder to manslaughter. Adequately provoked is the key word there. It's adequately provoked. The provocation must be substantial enough to warrant the killing. If not, the defendant will likely be charged with second-degree murder. So involuntary manslaughter is, oops, it was an accident. And that's what the prosecutors are basically saying that they're allowing to occur. They're saying, okay, we're allowing for the fact that it's an accident, but you should still be charged, which I agree with. And I'm going to say devil's advocate. If it was in fact an accident, sure, involuntary manslaughter. Got it. Yep. That's the correct charge. He should be charged. Any other person in the entire world would be charged with it. If I pointed the gun at you right now while you were filming me and I pulled the trigger and I killed you, I would be going to jail. The end.
Period. Point blank.
Point blank. Ha, get it? Yeah. Point blank. That's exactly what would happen. So the fact that this man, and it pisses me off, walked around for 3 years. I get it, man. And I've said this a million times. When lawyers get involved, it ruins everything. The minute that lawyers got involved with law, it ruined everything. Which they have their place. I get why they're there.
My favorite thing is, though, although Alec repeatedly denies pulling the trigger, given the test findings and observations reported here, the trigger had to be pulled or depressed sufficiently to release the fully cocked or retracted hammer of the evidence.
Oh, you mean it was a gun? You're telling me it was a gun, and if you squeeze the trigger, it goes off? Weird.
Well, I mean, there are some guns that when you pull the trigger once, it goes boom, 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 boom. And
it's an automatic.
No, it's an issue with the firing pin.
Oh, okay. You're talking about something like
there. There can be those things like, oh, I bumped it on the table and it went off.
Right, and that's typically on a hammer fired. A single action can actually do that if you drop it.
Oops, I'm sorry.
Which is why they came out with double action.
You literally have to cock the hammer and depress the trigger. Because I don't think that gun was a double action.
It was not.
Because if it
was a single action. It was described specifically as a single action revolver.
Because a double action, you can cock that back. And
it will stay.
And then you can pull the hammer back up.
Right.
And then it'll be half cocked or whatever. And then you pull the trigger it fires.
I'm looking over right now, making sure it wasn't a single action.
A single action.
Sure it was.
If it's a replica of the gun from the time period, it would be a single action.
I'm 99.99% sure it's a single action.
Which means that's why you see in the old westerns where they're fanning the trigger with the hammer depressed. They normally shave the hammer a little bit so they can, because you have to cock it every single time.
So I want to bring up this article again from the Daily Wire, but this is from January 31st, 2023. So this is very shortly after he was officially charged with involuntary manslaughter. So they're going after the same charge.
Right. But it was dismissed without prejudice,
with prejudice, dismissed with prejudice.
Okay.
It's a negligent use of a deadly weapon charges were also filed against Rust assistant director David Halls, who pleaded no contest. So David Halls was like, so there was something that went wrong on that set, that something was not done.
Right.
So here I can ascribe and say, okay, he pleaded no contest to negligent use of a deadly weapon, which means that proper protocols were not observed.
Right.
So he didn't observe proper protocols, which means that at absolute minimum.
Well, with no contest, he's not saying he's at fault, but he's not saying he's here. He's not saying he's guilty. He's not saying he's innocent, but he's not contesting the charges.
Correct. When reviewing the script and witnesses' interviews for this particular scene in close-up shot, evidence indicates the scene shot did not require the weapon to be fired, the document states. It was also determined by consultation with expert armorers that in rehearsal, plastic guns or replica guns should be used and no firing of blanks is required. So not only should they have been using a replica or plastic gun, no firing. Prosecutors portrayed Baldwin as not taking firearm safety seriously on site, stating that he was not, quote, not present for required firearms training prior to the commencement of filming.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like he is a big anti-gun advocate. Like no,
yep. And when he showed up to training sessions, he was distracted, talking on his cell phone to his family during the training.
Yeah.
Photos and videos clearly show Baldwin multiple times with his finger inside of the trigger guard and on the trigger while manipulating the hammer, drawing, pointing, and holstering the revolver. Dude, I'm sorry. At the end, voluntary effing manslaughter. Dude knows how a freaking gun works.
Mm-hmm.
You know how a gun works. Not only that, but you are very well versed in it. And I can pull up, like you just said, video after video of him saying that guns kill people. And then for him to just negligently use that weapon, he killed her. The end.
Right. Here's where I had, like, I don't agree. But with that statement of constantly seen, like, with his finger in the trigger guard or whatever, the single barrel or the single action old revolvers like that, if you're going to do any of the cool whatever, that's your only place of
yeah, you
purchase.
Have to put your finger. I get that.
Trigger. You can't even pull, like, you can't.
But why was it a real gun?
Right. No, like, exactly. I mean, why was it loaded? Why did it have anything in it?
Yeah, and apparently not. So this shit goes deeper. Apparently he had live ammunition. They had blanks in his bandolier.
Right.
But apparently there was a live round found in his bandolier as well. And there was 2 that were found on an equipment cart. And there was another one that was stuffed in the box of ammunition that was sitting, that they were using for the set, the box of blanks. There's apparently another live round that was found there.
Well, you can see the difference between
a blank and a live. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, because, well, even a propped bullet, which means they have taken out the lead, emptied all of the stuff out of it, and then reseated it so it looks like a live bullet is in a chamber, but it's not a live bullet. However, the primer, depending on how loose that is and the strength of the primer, can actually propel the bullet
a la Brandon Lee.
Yeah, into the thing.
Which is what happened to Brandon Lee. People think it was a blank. It was not. It was a prop bullet.
Right. That the primer went off, pushed it into the barrel. Then a blank was fired from it without clearing the barrel.
Correct.
Which caused it to be just an actual bullet.
Correct. Right. So that's what I'm saying. A la Brandon Lee. That's how that happened. And in that particular case, all of that was just negligent. Nobody got in any real serious trouble due to a variety of factors. Right. But that is not the same case on this set. There were live rounds for this particular gun that were found on set.
And if he was an executive producer, then he is responsible for anything that happens on that set.
He is, absolutely. So he is responsible for her death.
So not only is he responsible because he pulled the trigger, but because he is an EP on the production.
Yes.
And I know they give EPs out for people, like, oh, we'll give you points on the back end, yada, 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 if you do
for sure. For sure.
Well, this should be a lesson to people who go, well, if I'm going to be an EP on this thing, it needs to whatever, because it's going to make me responsible.
Correct.
And people
have
need
your
to
legalese, have your P's and Q's tied up.
And you're like, hey, if I'm going to be an EP on this and I'm going to be responsible for something that happens on this, then we're needing to follow this stuff.
Agree.
If not, then I am not going to do this.
And here's the thing. At the end of the day, I'm happy he's being charged. And listen, with the evidence that's been presented If this is what they can get him on, fine. If he's found guilty, it's 18 months in prison. Okay. I don't think that's...
It needs to be 18 months.
No, it needs to be 38 effing years. It needs to be life.
Right. No, but I'm saying that if he's going to only do 18 months, he needs to be in Gen Pop.
Sure. I can agree to that. Yeah. No Club Med for this guy.
Just make it the worst 18 months of his life.
Agree.
He don't need to sit around like Club Fed and watch cable and play racquetball.
They get cable. They get iPads
right, but
now.
Like, but like no playing racquetball and
they get access to social media and all that. Did I tell you that?
Yeah,
that's a whole thing that they get now. But anyways, it's hardly a punishment anymore.
Here's how why I was wondering, like all of the jail and prisoners like having TikToks like from jail.
Yeah, that's how they got access to social media. But anyways, yeah. So Murder 2, that's kind of where I feel like that. I feel like it's murder, and I'm sorry. Just based on everything that's been presented, all the evidence that's in front of you, you can say, and this is how our justice system works, and I'm thankful that our justice system does work like this, because I would rather 99 guilty men go free than to punish one innocent man. I'm a firm believer of that. I hate it. I hate that that's a circumstance in which we have to trust. However, I think that that's the best case scenario, and you need to be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And unfortunately, because of the way that he presented all of these things and the way that he did this, and maybe some new evidence comes forward and somebody can be like, no, dude, I watched him put the bullets in the gun. Cool. Murder. The end. Done. We're done. Right. Thankfully. But I get that that's what they have to do. And I'm not mad at the prosecutors. I'm generally not. I'm just pissed off that he's going to get away with murder in Helena Hutchinson's. He's going to get away with it. Right. And I'm sure he's going to brag to his friends and all this stuff. And here's the other thing, too. Maybe new evidence is brought to light during discovery. Maybe there's all kinds of cool stuff that comes out after the indictment, because the indictment's done. They're charging.
I totally can't wait for a discovery.
Oh, it's going to be great. Because all of that film, all those cool things, it's going to come out. It's going to be fantastic. Right. But they can always charge him again for something more severe.
I mean, as we end this, literally, he has maintained repeatedly that he didn't pull the trigger, and the experts have said
a pull or a rearward depression.
Yeah, it can't fire without the hammer being cocked and the finger and the trigger fully depressed.
Yeah.
So on that note, I am Topher.
I am Crazy Chris.
And we will see you in the next video.
Peace.